Chapter 15 starts talking about ethics. Now, ethics very much follows on from corporate governance because, again, it's all to do with the way that you should act as a company. As we have said in previous chapters, one of the things to realise with F1 is that it's very much a stepping stone to topics that you're going to see later on. F2 and F3 are exactly the same. All the things that you see in F3, all the double entry you see in F3, you need again at F7, and you need it again at P2. But it's obviously going to be following on. With F2, all the stuff you do on things like variances, you see again at F5, you see it again at P5, it obviously moves on. With F1, a lot of the things that we're doing in this particular paper, particularly the later chapters, you see again, but the trouble is you don't see them in one place. F2 goes to F5, goes to P5. F3 goes to F7, which goes on to P2. But F1 sort of goes all over the place, to be honest. Bits of it will appear again in F8. Bits of it will appear in P1. Bits appear in P3. Bits appear in P5. Bits appear in P7. So one of the reasons why the last part of these notes is very much a little topic and a little topic and a little topic is because then later papers, they're all going to be expanded and you're going to see a lot more of them. So this is trying to give you an overview, an idea of the kind of topics that will become important, but in later papers. And as I say, one of them is ethics. Ethics is going to be like our corporate governance, all to do with the way that we do things. This will become a very big deal when you get to P1. So first of all, what are we talking about when we're talking about ethics? It's all to do with goodness and badness. In other words, it's not the same as whether something is legal or not. If something is illegal, it means you must not do it. You would be breaking the law. So it's very clear, that's illegal, don't do it. That is legal, that's okay. But what ethics is to do with is you shouldn't do something. Now the trouble is, that's a bit of a more complicated area. Let's look at the law, that's illegal, we mustn't do it. Let's think about whether we think we should do something or not. So, for example, ethical decisions are things like how fast should we chase our debtors? Should we chase our receivables? As long as we're not breaking the law, should we go round to their houses and go and collect the money? It's not breaking the law, but is that something that ethically we should do? So, why is ethics becoming important? Because customers are starting to think that it's more important. So therefore, they will be more likely to deal with companies that they feel are ethical, that are going to treat them fairly. Investors are more likely to want to buy shares in companies which they feel are ethical. So there's a big overlap here with corporate governance, because again, we're talking about the way we treat other people outside the organisation. So, ethical behaviour should be part of your corporate governance. This is the way we treat customers. This is the way we treat employees. This is the way we treat suppliers. It could be a differentiator. Now, we talked about the body shop in the last chapter. Another example is the Co-op bank. In the UK, there is one particular bank who have made it clear for a number of years now that there are certain industries that they will not invest in. So they won't invest in defence industries. They won't invest in pharmaceutical companies that do testing on animals. There are certain industries and companies they will not invest in. So because of that strong ethical stand, there are a number of people who only will invest with them because they are happy with where their money will be invested and where their savings will be spent. So it could be a way of differentiating yourself from your rivals. You can use it to reassure your shareholders, because again, shareholders will be more comfortable with the idea we're going to behave in a particular way. And it could help with your staff. Your staff will probably be happier to work for a company knowing that the company is behaving in a sensible way. What about ethics as far as the individual is concerned? From the customer's point of view, ethical companies will change when the customer changes. So if we decide as customers we want something different, the company will change as well. Repeating the point that we've just made, we will often choose people in preference to somebody else. Now, as an example of that, when my wife and I are doing the cleaning, which we do at home, although I have to say, to be honest, my wife does most of it because I can't stand doing it, we could buy lots of different household cleaners. There are a big range of them, but we tend to buy one in particular because it is better for the environment. So whether that's true or not, I don't know, but that's what it advertises itself as. So we will buy that one in preference to all the other ones because we feel it's behaving more ethically. We believe it's taking its social responsibilities more seriously. So that's why we spend the money with them. As I say, I have no idea if it actually makes any difference at all. From the employee's point of view, so somebody working for the company, there will be fewer difficult decisions. I have got a customer and I'm not sure whether I am supposed to chase them for their money, how much I am supposed to chase them, how aggressive I am supposed to be with them. I have got my manager who has said I need to collect the money, but the customer has said that they haven't got it. Ethical framework would give me a way of saying to my manager, look, I cannot do any more at the moment because I have to follow these rules and I can't do anything more at the moment. So in a way, the idea behind having an ethical framework is so that the employee, to a certain extent, is protected from the manager getting upset with them. Why didn't you go out and hassle that customer to get the money out of them? Because the ethical framework that this company employs means that I can't. So it's to protect the employee. Again, because of that, you may want to choose to work for particular companies. Now that again might mean that ethical companies will get the choice of who applies to them. That means the recruitment and selection will be a lot easier because they'll get the best people applying there. Why would you want to go and work somewhere where you know that the customers are going to be treated badly, is the argument. So it could help you with your customers, it could help you get and keep employees. Over the page, ethical considerations. Here are just a few of the kind of things that we're talking about. So, manufacturing companies, pollution, I've already mentioned that. Sourcing, where are we getting our raw materials from? How much are we paying for them? Are we paying a fair price? Are we paying on time? Or are we saying, we're a big company, you're a very small supplier, we'll pay you when we're ready? Pharmaceuticals, what do they get tested on? Do they get tested on animals or not? Pricing. This has been a big issue over the last few years. Big companies, big pharmaceuticals companies will say it costs us millions upon millions upon millions of dollars to try and produce a drug for something. So that means we have to charge a lot of money because we've got all that investment, which of course is fine until you start thinking that means there are an awful lot of people in the world who cannot afford those tablets. So that means that they suffer. Is that fair? Should we have different prices in different countries? So pricing for pharmaceuticals is a big deal. At the moment, one of the biggest deals is things like AIDS treatments in Africa. So if you price them at a full price, then the African population would not be able to buy them. And so therefore that might run into problems. So ethical decisions, we don't have to do this, not breaking the law by charging a high price, but maybe we shouldn't do it. Maybe we should charge a lower price. All industries have to worry about health and safety. Again, making sure that they don't do the bare minimum. They have to make sure their employees are looked after. Now, there's a number of different ways when we're talking about ethics that we can look at things. We can look at things from the shareholders' view or the stakeholders' view. Shareholders are the owners of the company. They're basically interested in money. But notice what it says. It says ethics technically is bad for business. Because the more ethical you are, you will turn away customers, you'll spend more on those customers, you'll pay extra to suppliers, it will be bad for the bottom line. So all we should do is do the minimum we have to. Comply with the law and no more than that. But if we look at things from the wider point of view, we think to ourselves, well, a company is not just about the shareholders. it also includes the employees, the local residents, etc., etc., then maybe we could say that ethics is good for business because, as we said earlier, ethical companies will get more customers and they will get the best employees. So therefore, it's actually in their own interest to be ethical. Even if it's not in their own interest, the moral view says that being ethical is the right thing to do anyway. As human beings, we should always try and do the right thing, even if we don't have to. So being ethical means exactly the same thing. Now, 100 years ago, the balance was very much with the shareholder view. Ethics is bad, we're here to make money. It's now shifted towards the ones on the other side, on the right. The stakeholder view, ethics is actually good. Now, we have to worry about that because we are members of a profession. Now, I am a member of the ACCA, so I have to abide by what we're going to see in a second, which is the ethical guidelines. You also have to abide by them. As soon as you signed up as a student, you have to abide by them as well. So, because we are a profession, we have extra things to do. We have to influence ethical behaviour at work. We have to try and make sure the managers do something to at least consider ethical considerations. Now, obviously, in real life, that's difficult because it's difficult to go around telling your boss, I'm an accountant, therefore you must do this. I think you should do this because it's ethical. But we can't stand by and ignore something that we know is unethical. We're not allowed to do that. Now, that's because we're members of a profession. You can see underneath that, a profession itself is you gain some kind of theoretical knowledge. There is a governing body, like the ACCA, and that governing body has an ethical code. And the ethical code of the ACCA is we will see in a second. So as an accountant, I have no choice. I have to behave ethically, so do you. Now, my wife is an MBA. She's not got a professional qualification. If she was running a company, she can do what she likes. She can behave unethically, because remember, unethical is not illegal. So she can run around doing things that are unethical. There is not a problem with that, but I can't. Now, that's why ethics is a big deal, because you want to be a member of the ACCA. And the ACCA take this very seriously. So, the Code of Ethics. If you remember, we just had on the previous page, optic. So, objectivity. In other words, what we will always do is we'll be guided by numbers. Objective as opposed to subjective. Subjective will do this because I think it's the best. Objective, I've looked at the numbers for these 2 or 3 options, and I think this one is the best based on the numbers. So we're not going to do things simply because we have a personal opinion. We're going to do them because we can prove they have the right thing for the company to do. We should always behave professionally. So again, it means if we're being paid to do a job, because we're accountants, we have to do it properly. So if you are working on an audit team, even if nobody's around, you can't just make up the audit tests. You are supposed to be doing them properly, even though it's a pain to do, even though it's going to take you 4 hours to do something, and nobody's actually going to know whether you did it or not, then you're still honour bound to actually do it because you're a professional. Technical competence and professional competence. It is up to you to make sure that if you are working as a financial accountant preparing financial statements, you must make sure you are up to date with the latest international accounting standards. If you're a tax accountant, it is up to you to make sure you're up to date with tax legislation. Otherwise, you are not performing a professional job. So you've got to make sure you do that. You will see the joys of that when you've qualified and you start talking about continuing professional development. But that's something for the future. Integrity. You must be honest. So you're an accountant, you are doing somebody's tax return, you are doing somebody's accounts. It might be fairly easy for you to cheat something. So it might be easy for you to perhaps charge the client more money than you should do. Particularly if you are preparing somebody's accounts, it might be very easy for you to pocket some of the money and the client never knows about it. Integrity, you're not supposed to do that. And finally, confidentiality, you're not supposed to tell anybody else what you're up to. As accountants, we are often in a very strong position because we often know what's going on before anybody else does. Certainly from a financial point of view, we see what people are reporting to us every month. We see what's going on. We've got an indication if the company's doing well or badly. Confidentiality, we're not allowed to tell anybody else. Now, the ACCA take this very, very strictly. If anybody breaks those rules, then they can punish, they can sanction that person. It could be a fine. The ultimate is they will be thrown out of the ACCA, and that has happened to people in the past. We have to make sure that we follow the ACCA's guidelines as much as anything else because it's safer.